Welcome to the Big and Little video blog, and this is Hexagon number 13, Feather Diamonds, and it's a bit of a variation, this one, because it's not done in the round, it's done backwards and forwards, and we're starting off with the blush, joined by the sky blue and the slate. So we start off with a slip knot. So far, so straightforward. Okay. And I'm going to work this loosely so it's easier to see. So we do 2 chains. Now into that second chain here, the first one that you made, I'm going to make 2 double crochet. And that first chain that you folded over becomes your standing chain. So that's the one that you folded up, and that becomes the standing chain. So now we're going to turn this round and make 1 chain for our standing chain, and then 1 DC in each of those 2 stitches that you've made. So the way this pattern works is you increase 1 row and then you do a straight row. So we make another chain for our turning chain and turn. It doesn't matter if you turn and then make the chain, or chain and then make the turn. And now we're going to do 2 into each stitch. So 2 into there and 2 into here. Now, unlike when you're working with a treble, when you do a double crochet, the standing chain doesn't count as one of the stitches. So you only count the ones that you've actually made. So then you turn, make a chain, and now it's a straight row where we just do 1 stitch into each of those. And don't forget, we're using UK terminology. So this is a UK double crochet. In the States, they call this a single. Now it's an increase row again. So I'm going to do 2 into that row, and then straight until I get to the last one. And then in the last stitch, we're going to do 2. So you're increasing in the first and the last stitch. And then we do our plain row. So 1 chain for the turning chain. And you should have 6 stitches now. So I've done another row, and I've got 10 stitches along here, and I was getting confused between which was the increase side and which was the decrease side. Now I know that this is a straight side with no increases because I've cunningly put a sticker on the other side to remind me when I turn over. So if you're anything like me and you forget these things, or if you get interrupted and have to put your work down, then it's fine just to make life easier for yourself. So now I know this is a straight row with no increases. So I've done up to 12 stitches, and I'm doing, I did an increase row, now I'm doing my plain row. Oh look, my sticker's fallen off. There. Oh, that's my increase reminder. And then don't forget to go into this last stitch at the end. That's a common mistake, and then you end up with slightly wobbly edges. So on this next row we're going to start decreasing. So I start off with our chain as usual. Now instead of, normally you'd work into this first stitch at the foot of the your first chain, but you're going to miss that one and work into the next one. And it's a very easy way of just reducing the number of stitches that you've got. So then you work along the row as normal, always going under both bars. And when you get to the last 2 stitches, you don't go into that one, but you do go into the last one, so you've missed one at the end as well. And then we're going to turn and do a straight row. Now, do we go into that last one or not? The best way to tell is by counting your stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, that's what we've decreased to, so we should have 10 stitches. So if in doubt, count your stitches. Now the next row is again a decreased row, so I'm going to miss that first one and go into the second. So you repeat those 2 rows until you've only got 2 stitches left. So I've got to the last 4 stitches and it's a decreased row. So I've done my 1 chain and I'm going to skip the first stitch and go into the second. Then you skip the next stitch as well and go into the last one. So now you're down to 2. So we do a straight row. And now we're going to do to double crochet 2 together. So you go into the first stitch and pull up, then go into the second one and pull up, and then go yarn over through all 3, and then we finish with a chain in that last as we fasten off here. There. So that's your diamond. Now we just need to make the other 2. So here we are, I've made 2 more of these diamond shapes, and the job now is to sew in the ends. So I've got my blunt needle and then we're going to thread in just along the edges a few rows to secure the yarn. The idea of the blunt needle is that it doesn't split the yarn, so that you're not going in between stitches, as it were, you're going under the yarn. There we are, and that's enough for one. And then I'm going to pull it a bit too tightly and snip it, and then when I flatten it out, the end just disappears inside. So sew in all your ends, and then we're going to put our diamonds together. So I've sewn in all but 2 of my ends, the longest ones, and the idea about these shapes is that they go together cleverly like this to make a hexagon. So what we need to do now is to sew up these seams in as neat a way as is possible, and it's good to make sure that all your although this pattern is kind of double-sided, you might find that one side looks slightly neater than the other. So there, I'm going to do mine like this. There, I think that way. And I've threaded this longest edge, and I'm going to sew this up with mattress stitch, which those of you who've done some knitting will be familiar with. So I've gone into the very furthest loop in that corner, and then I'm coming back over here and I'm going to go into this bobble that's sticking out on the edge, and then back to this one, always going from the same direction, so the needle is always travelling in the same way, and then come back over here and we'll go under that bobble, and the same again, just the little bobble that's sticking out at the edge. And then when you pull the stitches tight, you should see that it doesn't show. Almost invisible, isn't it? So keep doing this all the way down the side. And when you get to the apex in the center, I'm going to start gathering another side in, and going down this route here, but in the same way. So pick up the loop on one side and then the protruding loop on the other side. Oh. And now I've got to the end of this seam as well, so I'm just going to sew the end in along the edge here, and this edge will be concealed by your white edging later on, so it won't show. And now I need to finish this seam here with I use the grey yarn there. So here's the finished hexagon. Now don't worry if it doesn't lie completely flat. You can block it by spraying it or dampening it with some water and letting it dry, and pinning it out if you can, and then it'll be in much better shape. But before that we're going to do our feather stitch, and that's to cover up these seams. Now the seams are pretty good, I'd say, but we can cover them with this embroidery and it'll look very pretty. So I've got some blush yarn, and I'm going to secure the yarn at the bottom of the corner of the diamond of the same colour so that it doesn't show, and then come up at that bottom corner there. Now the stitch is actually much simpler than it looks, so I'm just going to go to the same place on the other side, and then I come up a row above on that blue side, and then I'm going to catch that thread like that. It's a bit like a chain stitch, isn't it? Now this is going to go to the same level on the blush side and then come up a row above, oh no, that didn't work, did it? Oh yes, look, we go under there. God, can't even remember how to do it myself. There we are, and then we go over the same level on this side, and then remember to tuck under the stitch there. There we are. Oh, now I've got myself in a tangle here, so there's probably a clever way of doing it so that you...
There we are.
So at this final stitch here, I'm going to just go straight in and fasten off that bit of yarn because it's too short to do another row. It's tempting, isn't it, to have a really long piece of yarn, but if you keep on pulling it through like this, it gets slightly worn and fluffy and won't look so neat when you've finished. So it's better to take the time to have shorter pieces and fasten off and start again. So that's what it looks like on the reverse, and this is it on the front. Now I'm going to do these other bits here. And there you have it, feather diamonds. Done.